Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 43 of Show Fever. Today we'll be going over episode 6 of the One Piece live action season 2 by the title of Nami Deerest. Now, this episode begins the Drum arc, the Drum Kingdom arc of One Piece, which is a very good arc. It is heavily overrated in my opinion because I don't really believe Chopper's backstory is as tragic as some people say. I honestly believe Laws is probably the saddest in all of One Piece, but yeah. So this story has three main plot lines going on throughout it, so I will kind of discuss each of them in seclusion rather than just all in cohesion and going flipping back and forth. But yeah, so it starts off with a bit of a prologue with us seeing Robin as she is talking with Wapol, who is the king of Drum Island, and she's kind of negotiating with him, and eventually we see her give him the devil fruit, which Wapol has. I can't remember the exact name of it at the moment, but it'll get told later on. But yeah, so we see him consume the devil fruit. Then we go back to the Straw Hat's point of view, where we see as Nami is laying in bed with her sickness, and we learn that she has been down for 4 days, and so they are looking for an island to rest at and get her healed. Now, they're briefly talking in Vivi's, and they're like, well, we need to get to Alabasta so that Vivi can get back. But Vivi's like, no, we need to get Nami to a safe location, and that island over there looks like the safest. And she's like, that Drum Island conveniently has a lot of medics. So they ultimately end up going to Drum Island, and once they land there, they see that it is full snowy island. It's a winter island, and they end up walking up on to Drum Island and just kind of meet with the people eventually. So here I'm going to go over one of these specific timelines. So in this, we have a flashback to a reverie, and a reverie is a gathering of all the kings that are a part of the kingdoms of the world government. So I think there's like, I think it was 20 originally, but the world government grew as the years went on. But yeah, so we see as at a world government, at a reverie, we see as the chairman is speaking and all that. We see Wapol, and we get to see King Cobra, who's the dad of Vivi. And so it was Nefeltari Cobra. But we see them all discussing, and we see as Wapol's kind of talking about how his despotism and tyranny works for him, even though technically it doesn't. But we also see as Cobra kind of refutes him and all that, so that kind of starts the rivalry between Drum Island and Alabasta. And then we get to see little Vivi a little bit, who's been listening in on the reverie. And I think they honestly did a really good casting of young Vivi because it looks almost exactly like her grown up Vivi. But yes, that was really cool. And also Wapol's design. I know some people were hating on Wapol's design, but I honestly kind of like it. I think it's about as realistic as you can get with a live action Wapol, because Wapol's one of those very, very peculiar One Piece characters. And I think they did really well with it, so I appreciated that. Yeah, so after that we see as young Vivi is talking with Igarum, who caught her, and they're just kind of discussing briefly, and they see as Wapol comes raging out of the reverie room, and he walks by, and Vivi gets in his way, and he smacks her upside the head because she's in his way, and he eventually realizes that she is the daughter of King Cobra, and he's like, oh, but who cares, and then storms off. And we see as Vivi apologizes for being in his way and takes it very well, but then we flash to her being in her own room, and she's crying and all that. We see Igarum come and console her and tell her how she displayed such a good character. But yeah, so then the next kind of main story arc that happens is with Smoker and Toshigi. So Smoker and Toshigi ended up landing on an island that had a marine communication outpost, and they're looking for a way to report back to Marineford so they can tell them that they didn't find any Baroque Works agents on the Grand Line, and they're going to start looking for the Straw Hats again. So they land on this, and they come to the communication outpost, and they see that Marines are dead. And they're looking around, and eventually they investigate the inside, and they see that all the transponder snows have been killed besides one, and that all the Marines are done for. And so eventually, in his investigation, Smoker is caught up by Mrs. Thursday, and they have a brief fight with a baseball, and Smoker ends up knocking a line drive back down her throat, and she's ultimately incapacitated. And then, as Toshigi is looking for the command center, we ultimately see as she has a run-in with Mr. 11, and they have a phenomenal sword fight. That's the thing. When it comes to One Piece live action, the choreography of the sword fights is phenomenal. Like, it's top class. But, yeah, we see this, and it's a really good fight, really interesting. And then Toshigi and Smoker end up regrouping and trying to interrogate Mr. 11, but ultimately he doesn't reveal anything, so Smoker incapacitates him. And it kind of moves on from there, because they are trying to figure out why they attacked the communication outpost. But yeah, then I'm going to go back to the actual Straw Hat story. So the Straw Hat story is they landed on Drum Island. to look for Nami a doctor to heal her. And so they go to enter the village, but no one will let them in. They're like, no, you're pirates, you can't come in. Because, as is revealed later on, Blackbeard, who is a very integral character in the story of One Piece, had attacked this village previously, and that's why Wapol was not in Drum Island, because he fled during Blackbeard's attack, and he took all of the doctors with him, and besides one. And so we see eventually that Vivi and Luffy end up like prostrating themselves, they bow down, and they're like, okay, and eventually they're let in because they see that these pirates are humble and they're not bad people, and they're willing to beg for mercy. So they end up letting in. We end up meeting Dalton. Now, I didn't know how Dalton's design was going to look in the live action, but I was highly satisfied. I know I've said this 1,000 times across the videos, but I am highly satisfied with each casting and each character design and costume design. Like, it's all phenomenal in One Piece live action season 2. Like, I've loved it. It is perfect. Exactly how I expected it to be. Not exactly how I expected it to be, exactly how I wanted it to be. But, yeah, so we move on from that, and we see as they are talking, and eventually Dalton reveals that there's one doctor left in the town. Her name is, she is believed to be some witch doctor, and she lives up on top of the highest mountain in Drum Kingdom, where the palace is, where Wapol used to live. And so they're discussing, and they're like, yeah, you can get there, but the only way to get up there is climbing straight up the mountain. And they're like, well, since that is the only place left, then Nami must go there. And Luffy kind of talks to her briefly, and she's like, you'll have to you'll have to ride on my back. Holy stutter. You'll have to ride on my back all the way up there. And Nami ultimately agrees to it because she knows it's her only chance of survival. So they end up going, and so the crew that ends up going is Sanji, Nami, and Luffy. And they end up going to Drum Mountain, and we see as Zoro, Usopp, and Vivi stay back. Now, Zoro's kind of pacing, he's kind of worried and all that, and Usopp's like, okay, get out of here, go do something useful. So he goes and talks with Dalton for a little bit, and we see as Usopp and Vivi are left together, and they kind of have another little bonding session. That's what I like about how each of these episodes have kind of shown us how the Straw Hats have bonded with Vivi, because that's an important connection that forms throughout One Piece, and it's a very long-lasting connection. So it's just cool to see each of these little bonding instances. But yeah, then we go back to Luffy, Sanji, and Nami. And Luffy, Sanji, and Nami, they're all preparing to go up the mountain, and we see as Luffy and Sanji get to going, but then at one point Luffy starts sliding down. I hate this scene because he tears his nails and all the skin flesh and all that, and it's just heebie-jeebies. And but yeah, he ultimately ends up saving himself, but then Sanji ends up slipping due to an avalanche, and Luffy has to grab him with his head as Sanji's falling and like slingshot him back up, and that's just a really cool scene. And Luffy ends up eventually crawling up to the top with Nami on his back, and there they stop. And as Luffy's about to go unconscious, he sees this big furry thing ends up coming to him. It's Tony. It's Tony's chopper. I don't know why I did that New Yorker accent with that, but yeah, it's Tony. And so they eventually end up taking him in, and Nami ends up becoming conscious, and we are introduced to Dr. Kureha. Now, Dr. Kureha is the main 139-year-old doctor who Chopper has learned under for a couple of years. And we see as she kind of describes herself, introduces herself, explains how she's a phenomenal physician. She accurately reads Nami's temperature of a 100.76, that precise, just by putting one finger on her head. And she tells her how she was bitten by a not really parasitic, but a bug that is supposed to be extinct, and she only got bit by it because she was on Litter Garden, which has a bunch of extinct organisms. And we then learn that the bug ultimately inserts bacteria into the person and causes them to get a bunch of inflammation. Like she said, encephalitis, myocarditis, stuff like that. But yeah. So we end up moving away from that, and we see as Luffy ends up coming in, running in. Well, first Nami actually ran into Chopper, and he just kind of didn't do much introduction. That's why I kind of skipped over it. But yeah, we see little Chopper, not big human form Chopper. But yeah, and we end up seeing as Luffy comes running in, he's like, that witch is trying to cook me into a stew. I don't know why he thought that. Probably because he had been in a sauna or something like that. But yeah, so we move on from that, and we see as Sanji ends up waking up, and they all kind of discuss what Kureha has done for him and all that, and who Kureha is a little bit more. And they ultimately come to the realization that, hey, these people are not going to hurt us. Their doctors are here to heal us. Now, Nami does get threatened with a knife, but that's because she tried to leave before she was fully healed. And Kureha's like, you don't leave my area unless you're dead or you're fully healed, so you're not leaving. But then we see as they're talking about being hungry, and Kureha's like, well, I'm not no chef, but Sanji's like, you know what, I am a chef. And so that's really kind of where the episode's end. We see with Luffy actually seeing Chopper and being amazed by him. But yeah, that's like I said, that's where the story ends for episode 6. And honestly, I really loved episode 6. I'm not a big fan of the Drum Island arc, but I believe the pacing of the live action version will actually make me enjoy it more, because I mean it's really good so far. And I'm so impressed with the casting and the costumes. Like Korea looked phenomenal. It did so because I'm so used to Korea's kind of raspy voice that she has in the English dub of the anime, but it was still a really good voice. It was really good casting and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm still continuously impressed by how well they have done with One Piece live action season 2, especially with Chopper. I knew since Mr. 13 looked really good that Chopper would as well, but Chopper, he looks really good in action and motion and all that good stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed the beginning of the Drum Island arc with Nami Dearest, which is the name of the episode. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about that, and all I really have for episode 43 of Self Review. So thank you very much for watching.